I'm Carsby Anderson, Vice President of Student Services at Monterey Peninsula College, and we were happy to host Rudy here today, Rudy Martin, because of his significance in our community. Rudy is not a native of Seaside, but has lived here, grew up here actually, and was raised here. And the significance is that he's bringing back books that are talking about the history of the community. His book not only talks about the history, but also talks a little about the religion, development of the religious community in Seaside, as well a lot about his family and their significance in the development of the city. For students, this is a wonderful opportunity for them to see some of the history of our city. And it's changed so much over the years in that the community that used to be here, which was known as the largest African American community between San Francisco and LA, has changed very significantly. The demographics are not what they used to be. So for our young African American students to learn about what it used to be, as well as other students to learn about what it used to be, and to see buildings and things in the community that they take for granted as being something else, as being really significant.
In addition to years and years of teaching, I've always been a scribbler, as some folks call us. And three of the results are a family memoir titled On the Move, a novel titled Natural Born Proud, and finally a collection of short stories called Seaside Stories, which was just published this past June 30.
So part of the new book is about what it's like to grow up black in middle-class America. Can you either comment on that a little bit, what it was like for you, or perhaps share something in the book that relates to that?
Let me say this. It seems to me that a great proportion of African American writing in this country is classifiable in two ways. One is the writing that aims to reveal ghetto life. I call it ghetto fiction in a lot of ways. That's not a bad thing, it's not a pejorative, but it's focused on urban city life with all of the ills and advantages that includes. But that's only one piece of black experience. The other category that most people try to drop black writing into is what I call plantation fiction. Right? These are the stories of rural life. Black farmers, black sharecroppers, black miners, black people as cowboys, people living and working in the world of agrarian production and the kind of dead-end employment that people experience there. And of course, in both ghetto life and agrarian farm life, the issues are still pretty much the same. My stories, by contrast, are neither ghetto nor plantation, but they try to focus on black life in an essentially bourgeois or middle-class setting, not free from racism and discrimination and all that stuff, but stories that entail other elements of black life than ghetto suffering and poverty or agrarian lynching and racial craziness. I repeat, not to say that there's not racial craziness elsewhere, but it's a little different take. And that's part of, I think, what's happening in black writing now generally, and it is certainly part of what it is that my writing is about. In 1938, the winter of 1938-39, my parents went on the road. Now, most people are aware of the massive black migrations that happened first around World War I and then later around World War II. Turns out that my family moved between those big migrations, but they had motivation both to escape racial oppression, to improve their economic condition, and since my dad was a Pentecostal preacher, to do the Lord's work. So, leaving Texas, Fort Worth, where Dan and I had been born, we went first to Cody, Wyoming, where my parents were supposed to work on a dude ranch, which never occurred. Then to Billings, Montana, for my father to start pastoring a small group of Pentecostal believers. And in 1943, after a short sojourn in San Francisco, we ended up in Monterey, where my father came to establish a church and a life for the family. I was 7 years old when we arrived in the summer of 1943. And I lived here, I went to school here, did what I did here as a growing up kid until I left home in the 1950s. So Monterey and the peninsula, this college, this entire community has always been pivotal in my consciousness and in my life.
Another question is, I was wondering if you could tell us about the special significance that the Seaside Library holds for you.
You know, it matters to me that this event today is in the library first at MPC, and that I will be working again this evening in the library in Seaside. Here's why. I never learned to read. I don't know when I began to read. Nobody appears to know when I began to read. All I know is that in my first day of school in Billings, Montana, my white teacher was totally discombobulated by the fact that the only black kid in the room, I was the only black kid in the room, I could read and was the only one in the classroom who could read. And rather than nourishing that in me, she punished me. And it just totally broke me down and frustrated me and made me wonder about my worth, about my value. A few years later at Seaside School, I was caught by my classroom teacher reading the library. My classroom was in the library. And when I didn't want to do math or when I didn't want to do social studies, I would read. She discovered my reading. And rather than beat me up, as the teacher had done in Billings at my first day of school, she promptly marched me across the street to the basement of what I think was a Methodist church, where the Seaside branch of the Monterey Public Library was housed. She introduced me to the librarian. The librarian explained what libraries do, and I walked out with an armload of books for free. And I got home and told my mother, my goodness, look at this, here are all these books. I can read them and take them back and get more. So the library there became very real in my life. The library here at Monterey College was equally real because I spent many hours studying and listening to music in this library. And I have no doubt that those are some of the kinds of experiences that created who I am now, who I am here today.
Dr. Martin originally came to me, I'd say about 2 years ago for his first book, On the Move. Was being published, and he has a really fond memory of the Seaside Library when it used to be in the basement of some building that's well before my time. I can't even remember. His recollection of libraries and librarians was that he was a bit of an advanced reader and wasn't encouraged enough until he met this librarian who not only encouraged him to read but gave him harder material to read, so she really challenged him. So he came to us with a bit of love in his heart, and I think what I could say about his new book, Seaside Stories, is that through meeting Dr. Martin the first time, I kind of have my own seaside story now as far as our relationship goes, because I've made a good friend in him and a professional ally as well. Anybody that loves librarians, of course, scores high in my heart, but Seaside is a very special place. It really is, and the turnout that we had for him coming back was like a welcome home. It was like a reunion. It was a down home type of situation, and we were surprised by that, and we were really pleased with that turnout. So for somebody to have left a place for so long, and I know that his family is really well regarded in this area, but to come back so many years later and to see some of your old friends and neighbors and, you know, have everybody be so welcoming, and then for us to have this new professional relationship come out of it is really at the heart of, I think, what Seaside is all about.
My being here today at Monterey College is sort of closes a circle begun in 1943. I had no idea when I first came to this campus as the newspaper boy who met the president that I'd be coming back here today as a writer. But, you know, when you're 12 years old, you frequently don't know where your life's going to take you. But it's grand to come back home and to have a chance to look at people and talk to folks about what was then a long time ago, 50 years ago, when I was a student here, when I lived on this peninsula, and I think I'll probably never survive it.